Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag College Show. It is week 3. We've had 2 weeks of exciting football already. I am joined by Alex, as always, to go through last week's games and see what's coming up this week with a little bit of our takes in the middle. Week 2 in the books. Did you enjoy it, Alex? You know, your team won again and they won very convincingly.
They did, and they won with a defensive shutout, which is much improved from the USC's defensive the last couple of years has been not brilliant. I think this is the first shutout they've had since 2011 when they shut out UCLA. So it was nice to see that they were taking that side of the ball very seriously now, and that's going to help carry them forward throughout the season. And it's good to see that even though they're playing a lower conference opponent in Utah State, they didn't play down to them. They kept the intensity up through the whole game, and it was clear to see from the interactions of the defensive players and Danton Lin at the end of the game how important it was for them to achieve that shutout and not let up and show that actually we can carry this through the whole game. So I was very pleased with that, and it was quite an interesting week of football. Obviously there was a big upset with Notre Dame in Northern Illinois. We mentioned that last week on the show, didn't we? We were talking about scheduling and why these big teams schedule the smaller opponents. And this is not why they schedule the smaller opponents. They don't pay Notre Dame paid 1.4 million to Northern.
I thought it was more than that. It was 1.8 million.
It was 1.8 million. Okay, they paid a lot for them to get embarrassed at home. So but like I said, for the smaller team, that's brilliant. They've got a shed load of money, a load of national exposure, and they've got the scalp of a top 5 ranked team at the time, wasn't it?
Yep, they were 5th.
Yeah. So there we go.
Yeah, it's Notre Dame breaking everyone's hearts again, letting everybody down. You know, this is becoming a bit of a common thing for them. This isn't the first time. I think it was 2 years ago, didn't they lose to Marshall really early on or something like that? So yeah, this isn't uncommon for Notre Dame to go in with high expectation. Everyone think they're going to do great, and then it all comes crashing down early doors, and they're nowhere to be seen. It does ask the question though: were Texas A&M just not very good, and that's why we hyped them up a bit too much?
I think we got that a bit wrong in our expectations of Texas A&M, because maybe they're not quite as good as we thought they are.
My team also have started off quite well. We haven't even conceded a touchdown yet. We've conceded 2 field goals so far. So all good on my side of the things as well. But we'll move into the games we covered last week, see how well we did. The first one was Texas versus Michigan. The final score was 31-12. To me, it wasn't a close game, and the score doesn't reflect how dominant Texas were. What's your take on this game? How do you feel about Texas now going forward, and where do you think Michigan are going from this game as well?
Yeah, I think they both teams are going in opposite directions, really. Michigan were very defensively very disappointing. They couldn't really stop them on the ground or in the air. Ewers had a solid game at 246 yards, 3 touchdowns. Tight end. Gunnar Helm is a tight end for Texas. He looked very good. They couldn't really get a grasp of him either, and they just looked completely outmatched defensively and offensively as well. Michigan's O-line was getting beat on the ground. I just don't know where they're going to go next. They got questions at quarterback as well with Warren. I think Orji turned up for a bit of the game, didn't he? A couple of plays, but yeah, they're a team that are struggling to regain a sense of identity from last season. I think because last season
they lost 18 players, didn't they, into the draft? It was ever likely that they were going to struggle. Michigan tend to start slow anyway. I remember last year. They started off quite slow, and they were in a couple of close games early doors last year. But they had that mentality, they had that quality to sort of get over the line. when I watched them this week, I felt like they weren't their usual selves. You know, they usually dominate the line of scrimmage. They usually play the clock well. They usually get the turnovers. And there doesn't seem to be any of that. And I know Harbaugh and Minter have left, and it's now Sharon Moore's team, but it just didn't look like the Michigan team that we've seen the last 2.5 years. And what the big thing for me is I think they're going to struggle to play games from behind now. I don't think Warren's good enough to pull them through. They've got no one they've really got no one at wide receiver. They've got Colston Loveland at tight end, but you're asking a tight end to be a wide receiver. I think he's going to have the drops like we saw him have. They're really, really going to struggle when they come up against bigger teams. It's just not. It was going to happen this way, wasn't it? It's just a shame it's gone so quickly.
But and they couldn't even rely on the run there either as well. They got no passing options. Donovan Edwards didn't really get going. He only had 80 yards rushing for the game. And if they can't lean on that and the passing game's not going, then they're stuck, especially if they find themselves behind early on.
I do think that Steve Sarkisian played a really, really good tactical game as well. A lot of people, like I say, thought the game was closer earlier on. But if you look at it in terms of the second quarter, 42 snaps for Texas, 15 for Michigan, who's dominating the ball. Quinn Ewers looks to be progressing every year. The O-line looks fantastic. And I think, this is where he got it right. He padded out the O-line, he called the plays right, and he shut down Mason Graham and Ken Grant. And I think once you shut those two down, who were dominant defensive linemen for Michigan, when they've got to go off and rest, that's when he put his foot on the pedal, pushed hard. And I think if anybody coming up against Michigan should take note of this and realize that if you can shut those two down, you can get a win here. So Steve Sarkisian playing an absolute blinder as well. And Quinn Ewers, just before we move on, people had question marks about him when he first moved over from Ohio. Then they had question marks about him last year, even that he wasn't consistent enough in throwing the ball, and he had glimpses of greatness and glimpses of averageness, and some that just weren't quite there. He definitely looks to have progressed every single year, and he does look very, very strong this year. This is not an easy opponent. They are tough on defense. People are now saying he's the contender for Heisman. How do you feel about that?
He's certainly making a case for himself, isn't he? The way he played with confidence, poise, and accuracy that he had in that game. If he plays like that every game, then he should be definitely within a shout of the trophy. Yeah, I don't think there's many quarterbacks who played better than him in week 2, really.
No, there's not. Well, there is some people play, but I think it's the level that he's playing at. Yeah. And the teams he's playing against so far, sort of thing, that are sort of separating him. Like I say, his footwork's improved. It's improvement as well. I know a lot of my mates that don't watch college football are all going, "Oh, should we be watching Quinn Ewers for the draft now? Will he be the number 1 pick?" And I'm like going, "Well, maybe he's not quite the tallest. He's not quite the heaviest. He's quite a slender guy. You've got to take all that into consideration. But he's definitely dominating college football at the moment." We move on to what turned out to be an exciting game. We said it was going to be a blowout or an upset, and that was Boise State versus Oregon. It ended 34-37 to Oregon. But at the half, this game was 20-14 to Boise. I did call it. I did say to Adam, Jeanty is dominant. Can he do it against the bigger team? He looked like he can do it against anyone. Oregon should panic. They've got two wins. The results are there, but something needs fixing there. Should they hit the panic button, or how do you feel about both teams coming off of this?
I feel like Boise State we probably underestimate them a bit, but they are who they normally are, and they were very good defensively. Like you said, Jeanty had a great game. And really, I think they exploited where Oregon are lacking on their O-line and D-line, especially the O-line. Yeah, the interior of the O-line. They're struggling. Obviously, they lost Jackson Powers Johnson to the draft last year. He was like the keystone of that line, and I think they're still working to get that solidified because they're struggling to keep the defenders off of Gabriel, and then the defensive line on the inside as well still needs a lot of work as well because they're giving up too many yards on the ground. So yeah, that's the areas they really need to get going. But overall, offensively, they're still trying to work it out. They're still trying to gel as a cohesive unit, which they're still not quite doing yet. They're still quite high up in the rankings, so the press seems to rate them. So I guess they will be a good team, but just not.
You go in with a high ranking, and you don't lose your first 2 games. You won them. Yeah. Your ranking's not overly going to change too much until something dramatically bad happens. As you said, both of us, and we mentioned it last week as well, that O-line it's brought 3 starters back. It's lost Jackson Powers Johnson. It just doesn't seem to be working. They've already given up 7 sacks, which is more sacks than they gave up the whole of last year. I think they only gave up 5 sacks in the whole of last year. So, and this is only playing Boise State and Idaho. What happens when they have to face an Ohio State and you've got JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer flying at you, who are going to be potential first-round picks in the draft next year on defense? Oregon, that game's only 4 or 5 weeks away. They haven't got much time to prepare for this. Should they be panicking? They should be all right. Oregon State, they're a good team. They're a good outfit. Then the Michigan State and UCLA are on the downturn. Ohio, they have got Michigan. I don't know. It might only be 1 loss for them. It's just going to be ranking for them, but I think they might struggle against any team that puts any pressure on Dillon Gabriel and can run the ball against them.
Yeah, they definitely need to sort that out as soon as possible. I was going to mention the game against Oregon State a bit later, but I think that's going to be an interesting one because that'll be Oregon State know who they are. They'll probably have the measure of them, and I think that's going to be another close game that they could end up scraping out a win. But I think they'll probably still leave a question mark. So I think, like you said, it's going to probably take till about mid-season at least for them to get really sorted out, if they do get sorted out. But I'm sort of hoping they don't.
And I think with what I saw from Boise State, I'm going to stick with it. I still think they qualify for the playoffs through the Mountain West. They haven't got anybody left to play. The last game, I think, is going to be their hardest one. Now, they have got UNLV in the middle, but Oregon State's probably the hardest one. But if Genty can carry on like that, 1, he's going to be absolutely ridiculously dominant through the year, and 2, he's going to be on a lot of people's radars for probably a second-round pick in the draft come next year. So I keep an eye on Boise for the rest of the year, I would say.
Yeah.
Moving on to the last game, which is Colorado versus Nebraska. The game ended 28-10. Now, Adam was the only one who picked Nebraska, the guy who claims he knows nothing about.
Yeah, we got that wrong, didn't we?
When we picked Colorado, we were on the hype train. We were with Coach Prime. We thought they could do it again like they did last year. And they really, if anything, got destroyed, and it was turned into a bit of embarrassment. What's your take on this game?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that Colorado's Ropio line came up against one of the rising top defenses in college football at the moment, and they just got obliterated. Because they had 6 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, a pick 6. It just, they couldn't get anything going. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders didn't have his strongest game, but it's hard to when you're getting pressure in the face. When you're getting so much pressure,
he's getting less than 2 seconds. He's getting probably a second to think about getting rid of the ball, and I think that that's a lot of pressure to put on a guy straight off the bat with how good that defense is. They gave up 8 sacks last year, 7 sacks this year. It's same as last year, isn't it? It's just I thought they were going to improve.
Yeah. Did you see he chucked his O-line under the bus? He probably chucked his O-line under the bus in the press conferences after talking to the press.
Well, yeah.
I mean, he was right, but it's not the best teammatey thing to do. But yeah, basically saying, now am I supposed to play like this when I'm getting blasted in the face constantly? Yeah, they got a lot to sort out there. They couldn't get it going there defensively. Still need some work as well. I think they're probably relying too much on the stars like Travis Hunter and Shador's brother, Shiloh.
Did he break his arm? Break his collarbone?
Did he? They're having a rough time. Yeah, but yeah, coming up against such a legitimate defense was too much of a challenge for them. And then they were facing Dylan Raiola had played out of his skin as well, didn't he?
He doesn't look like a freshman, does he? He looks like he's been playing longer than he has been. We said this might be his first proper challenge. Took it in his stride, didn't he?
He stepped up to that because he had 400 odd yards, and he's had 400 yards over 2 games, and he's accurate as well. He's got over a 70% completion rate, so he's reliable, he's accurate, and I think he just picked them apart.
I do think that when it comes to Colorado moving forward, I'm just not seeing enough from them in terms of offense. I do think the defense has improved slightly. They are looking a bit stronger and a bit more aggressive, but that offense just looks very, very samey. It doesn't look like they're going, oh, this isn't working. Let's change it. Let's do something different. And I know Coach Prime was talking in the press conference afterwards that he's just said he didn't change things quick enough, but I don't think they're changing things at all. They've got Pat Shurmur as the offensive coordinator. He's an NFL guy. He should be able to show the offense a few different things. And I think if they don't do this, they're going to struggle and they're going to be disappointing. And it's going to be similar to last year where it's maybe 4 wins at best again.
Yeah, I can't see it being too much different from last year. Next week's a potential turnaround week. They got Colorado State next week, that was a very tough game. Right? That went to overtime, didn't it, last year? So it'll be another lower level challenge because they're playing as a group of 5 team, but it's one that they really need to step up and step over if they're going to compete against the bigger and better teams, which we'll see. I think it's going to be another close game. Or potentially a Colorado loss.
On the flip side, we talk about Nebraska. They're ranked 23 now. This is the highest they've been ranked since 2016. And when you analyze it and go into it a bit more, and you kind of go, where are they at? We did talk about them at the start of the year saying Matt Rule, good with teams, 2-3 years with them, turns them around. And we look at last year, they had 7 losses. The Michigan loss, they got beat well. The Colorado one, which was at the start of the year, which started the hype train for Colorado, was, at the start of the second game of the season. But then you look at the other 5 games, they only lost them by 3 points. They turned over the ball in those 5 losses 17 times, and 15 of them were by the quarterback. So now they've got better quarterback play, and their defense is good. Could Nebraska kind of really show up this year? Are we looking at them and saying they at the end of the year that they've only got 2-3 losses? I know they've got my Ohio State, they've got your USC, they've got Iowa. They're good enough to beat the rest of them. I know Purdue, Illinois, Rutgers. They're tough teams. Wisconsin, they're tough teams, but they look like they've progressed from last year. And if they've got this quarterback play better, they win those close 3-point games, I think.
Yeah, I think they're definitely up there to potentially win those close games when they do come up against teams like Ohio State and SC. No, I don't think they're quite there yet. I think it's going to be an interesting game. All those games against those teams because they got the potential. If Dylan Raiola keeps playing the way he's doing, he's got a chance to keep pace with those teams, and if the defense keeps up the rate it's going. It's just needing to see how that correlates, if they can keep the same sort of stat lines consistent as they go up against the tougher and higher ranked teams. But I expect to see that come down a bit, and maybe a few losses start to creep in there.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on to a different topic. What was there anything from week 2 or anything moving forward now that's really like gripping you that you think is a big topic for the NCAA at the moment?
There's two things that stood out to me. One is a bit of one other thing I was looking forward to next week, and what we're not really talking about is there's a couple of rivalry games coming up from the old Pac-12 sort of conference. They've got like what was called the Civil War, Oregon and Oregon State, and then the Apple Cup, which is Washington and Washington State. And the only reason I'm really mentioning them is that I'm just a bit sad that they're not conference games anymore, and they've lost a bit, because college football has a lot of these sort of rivalry games with different trophies named for it, and they've got a bit of prestige and a bit of pomp and circumstance around them, and all a bit fun. It just feels like with the dissolution of the Pac-12, that's just lost a bit of that sort of college football magic, because now it's an out of conference game. The rivalries will still be there; they'll still want to beat the hell out of each other, but it doesn't seem quite as important nowadays. Not an in-conference game, and it's probably more important for the teams in the Big Ten now, because that will be impacting their standings in there, whereas Oregon State and Washington State are just basically playing against each other and trying to be not the team in second, so it won't have that much difference between them. But yeah, I'm just a bit sad that that's not quite as important as it was before, because I quite enjoyed those games. And the other thing I've been looking at more is targeting in college football, which is a rule in college football where you're not allowed to hit, obviously, with the crown of the helmet. And I often find myself questioning, because who got ejected over this weekend when I was watching it? There was one in the Texas-Michigan game?
It's been a couple.
There's been a couple. And
I've seen
the frequency of it. I can't work out why this isn't coached out of players. Like, just don't hit with the top of your head, even if you're going in. Yeah, it seems a thing that just needs to be down to discipline of these players. Obviously, they're trying their best. They're going full throttle. They want to smash the person who's got the ball, but they just need to do it in a way that's, one, not dangerous to them, dangerous to the other player. It's not going to get them kicked out of the game, because if it was, like you said, we've seen a few players being kicked out and is only ejected from the game. It was only week 2, so yeah. It's just one of those things that you don't see in the NFL, and then when you're watching college football, it's one of those things that just sort of stands out. And you think, just don't hit with your head.
I think it's really tough, obviously, with these lads are only sort of 18, 19, 20 years old. They want to go out, they want to play hard, they want to play physical, they want to be aggressive, they want to, have highlight reel, they want to prove to the coach that they're good. And I think they just need to remember the occasion and what's at stake, and rein it in a little bit. You can still play hard and fast without these dangerous tackles. I think, if anything, if you see some of the injuries that we got last year, you'd think they'd want to not do that. And but like you said, you get these rivalries that you were talking about as well. And when you get one of those rivalries, I think there's an element of you want to go out and hurt the opposition at some point in the game. So I think that's where these youngsters need to realize that it's college football for me is no longer kids playing football, and we should be like, oh, well, they are young because they're getting the NIL now. They're getting paid 3-4 million a year. I think they need to act a little bit more like adults. I know we've got to remember they're not, but I think with that being said, they should have a bit more, it's like wearing a suit to an interview. You got to show that you're prepared for what's to come later.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's they're NFL coaches as well, aren't they? That should be coaching this out of them. You are completely correct.
Yeah, just don't hit things with your head and you'll be all right.
Yeah, my quick one for the week, and because I don't know when we're going to cover them, and I just wanted to get the shout out now early doors. I know I was talking preseason about how excited about to see this guy. It's a guy from my own team. It's Jeremiah Smith from Ohio, the freshman. Ohio have done it again. They've found a guy that is going to be the talk of the town when it comes. What 2027 is he eligible to be drafted?
Something
You know,
like
his first game he had 5 receptions, 119 yards and a touchdown. Last week he had 6 receptions, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's not as if the wide receiver room is lacking and he's had to step up. They've still got Emeka Egbuka. They've still got Carnell Tate. They've still got Brendan Innes. I know they lost Julian Fleming, but he just seems to have slotted in straight away. Like we're saying, like Dylan Raiola, looks like he's been in the league for ages already. And I just want to say Ohio State have managed to do it again. They've got a monster receiver. They're definitely wide receiver university. And I wanted people to get the name out there so people can remember it and see it and track what he's doing, because I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic and dominant in college football for the next few years.
Yeah, he's definitely a player to keep your eye on, isn't he? I mean, and like you said, Ohio State just seems to keep churning out first round receivers every year. Marvin Harrison and who's it before, Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Paris Campbell, Michael Thomas, the list goes on.
It's just, yeah. So, if you want to pick a receiver, look at Ohio State first, because they're the best place, safest place to go.
If I don't mention the other one, Freddie might be upset with. Terry McLaurin was there as well. And I know Fred loves him. Right, we'll move on to the upcoming games that we're going to go over. The first one we wanted to talk about, and this is a Friday night. They've introduced some midweek games. I know it's not for us. I think it's Saturday morning, isn't it, for us? It's 1 o'clock in the morning, but it's a Friday game for the guys in America. Usually we just wait for the Saturday, and that's when all the games sort of kick off. But I've got a couple of these early fixtures in there. And it's Arizona versus Kansas State. They are the 20 seed and the 14 seed. The record between these guys is 5-1-1 to Arizona so far. They're both 2-0. Kansas State beat Tulane in their last game, which I think is the best team of the 4 that they've both played, and they managed to get the win on that. I don't think they covered the spread, but they managed to win that game. An exciting quarterback and wide receiver tandem. We've spoke about them every show, I think, at Arizona, going up against Kansas State, which they're a tough team to play, and a lot of people have got them down as a potential to make the playoffs. An early two ranked team game. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, Arizona's a team I really like. I developed a real strong soft spot from last year, and offensively they're normally really good. But last week against Northern Arizona, they struggled. They really struggled, and Tetairoa McMillan, who is the best receiver in college football at the moment, even better than your guy at Ohio State, I reckon, they held him to 11 yards. So that was.
Did he only have two catches as well?
2 catches, I think, for 11 yards, and So what was the final score? It was a relatively close game. It's like 22-10 or something, wasn't it? It's something like
22-10.
Yeah, it was probably for them a disappointingly close game. Defensively, they played fairly well, but they already wanted to get that going again against Kansas State. Interestingly, now that Michigan lost, they have the longest active winning streak in regular season games at 9 games with Arizona. So they want to keep that going. Kansas State, though, struggled a bit as well against Tulane.
They struggled in both of their games. I don't think they've covered the spread in either of their first 2 games.
No, and they relied a bit on some some things in the fourth quarter just to preserve that win. Because anyone, but was it 34-27, wasn't it? And they had a scoop and score, and then there was an offensive pass interference on Tulane, wasn't there, that sort of brought back their touchdown and allowed Kansas State to hold on. So yeah, I think this is going to be a tough match between two teams that are really looking to bounce back offensively and just really get things going again. I'm interested. I haven't really watched much of Kansas State yet this season, and I want to because keep an eye on them because they're going to be one of the teams in Dublin next year along with Iowa State. So interested to see how good they'll be. Defensively, though, Kansas State need to be a lot better as well. They've given up 342 yards in the air and 128 yards on the ground. So both their pass defense and rush defense hasn't been brilliant. So they're going to want to sort that out a bit. But it would definitely be an interesting game with two teams going at each other. But I think I'd favour Arizona slightly in that game.
Yeah, we've said this a few times when we go through games. It's usually a something versus a something that's going to determine it.
Yeah.
Now, Arizona are still the second, I think stats-wise, they're the second most explosive team in college at the moment in terms of explosive plays. So we know they're good at throwing the ball. Kansas State's secondary, although it came into this season with a bit of hype about it, it's really, really struggled already against UT Martin and Tulane. As you've said, it's not quite there. So they're going to be giving up those yards in the air to two of the most explosive guys in college football at the moment. And on the flip side of it, Arizona are struggling to defend the run. I think they're giving up an average of like 4.6 yards per carry. And Kansas State's run game has a bit of a three-headed beast with Giddens, Edwards, and Johnson. I think that all three of them are really, really good, and they need to be able to stop that. So it's tough because we've got someone that's going to go real heavy on throwing the ball, someone who's going to go real heavy on running the ball, and I do worry that the team that's going to be better at running the ball and wearing the team out is going to, maybe dominate the clock, wear out the team, work it that way. So they're definitely going to be trading punches through this game, and I think the over/under is 58 for this game as well. So it's a tough one to call. I would like to favour Arizona and say Arizona. I do think Kansas State might be the better team, but as before the season started, I couldn't get past Arizona as being a team that could potentially win their division. So I'm with you on it again. I think Arizona might pip them on this one.
Yeah, I think so. Kansas State has still been a bit conservative through the air, and I think that if Fafita and T-Mac can just get that connection going again in this game, then they might just be able to blow them open a bit. And then whether Kansas State can keep pace or not, they still need to work on their offense. They were only I think 2 for 10 on third down in the last game against Tulane. So in crunch times and important downs, that they've been struggling a bit. So they need to step up on that a bit.
Yeah,
so.
they need to get a lead and then use the run game if they're going to have any chance to beat Arizona. I think otherwise Arizona are just going to keep putting points on them over the top. The next game, we haven't had a chance to talk about them yet, I don't think, other than the preseason show. It's Alabama versus Wisconsin. Alabama seem to be firing on all cylinders under Kalen DeBoer. He seems to be getting it going. He seems to be getting the best out of Jalen Milroe. Wisconsin, of the past, used to be really, really strong team, usually strong on defense, usually strong in the run game. Haven't been as good over the last 2 years. It's an interesting matchup. As we said, I think we said before we went on to the show, there's not many really high-profile games this week, but I feel like this is one that you want to have a watch at and watch Alabama play a decent opponent and see how strong they actually are, because they look like we may have underrated them slightly. Well, I know you definitely did before the season started.
Yeah, absolutely did. I thought they're going to be a bit more of an adjusting period, but no, they're going to be right up there, aren't they? They've had 2 solid wins last week in South Florida. there was a bit of pushback from there, but I think Alabama are too good to not beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin played a couple of close games against lower ranked opponents. I can't remember who they played last week, but it was South Dakota. They managed to get the win over. But I think just the level of talent and the coaching on the Alabama side is going to be a bit much for the Badgers, I think.
Yeah, I think we mentioned Jeremiah Smith at Ohio. There's another guy I wanted to package them together and talk about them as a pair, but I thought as we're covering them a little bit later, I'll leave it till now. And that's Ryan Williams at Alabama. I feel like Alabama have really been missing that key wide receiver. It's what they missed last year. You know, of previous years, we've seen them have Devonta Smith, Jerry Jeudy, players like that. And I think last year they didn't have that guy. And now they've got him. And I think Ryan Williams, again, another freshman, 207 yards, 3 touchdowns on the season. I think he's going to be a real difference maker for them, and he's going to help that offense propel to the next level. We know how good Jalen Milroe is with his legs. I think this now helps him in the air. And I do think they're going to be in the playoffs and and if they get through the first round, I wouldn't write them off. I know it's not like saying, oh, yeah, but it's Nick Saban's Bama, and once they're in the playoffs, they can beat anyone. I know that's not the case, but I think they're another team. You can't ever write them off.
No. I think, obviously, some of that culture from Saban's time is carried to, obviously, DeBoer is doing it in his own way, but there's just too much of an ingrained tradition of winning for Alabama. The expectations, the skill level of the players is up there enough that they're going to be perennial contenders. You're right, though. I did underestimate them, and I think I was a bit foolish for doing that before the season started. Now we've actually seen them play some football, then you think, they are legit. They're going to be there, like they always are.
No, I think the question with this game is, can Wisconsin stay in it? Do you think they can cover the spread? I think it's 6. I think I will check. I think it's 16 points a spread. Now they've got Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback. The transfer. He's now a little bit more experienced. I think he's been playing okay so far for them. Do you think there's a possibility that this team can get close to them, or do you think it is a blowout?
I mean, I've been wrong every time I predicted a blowout before. I think it is going to be. I think Alabama are going to win this quite comfortably. I think there's going to be at least a 20-point difference.
I was right. The spread is 16. I was good memory. So I think that they won't cover it. I think Alabama are going to be too good. I do think, they are usually quite good at running the ball. Wisconsin, like I said, defense is usually strong, but I think it's a bit too much for them. And I think Alabama take the win. I wanted to give them a bit of airtime. I wanted to talk to them. They're now the fourth. They're the 4th seed now, aren't they?
I want to say, I need to check the rankings.
Well, yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I suppose you didn't see them being ranked that high so early, but fully deserved. I say fully deserved. Might have a quick look at their schedule before we move on to our last game. You might be able to get it quicker than me. All right. I mean, when is their next tough? Wow, it's the following week. It's week 4. They play Georgia.
Oh, Georgia, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be an interesting game.
That's going to be So I think all eyes on this game. I think this is a big game to keep your eye on, see what's what, see whether when we come back and we talk about whether they can actually go up against Georgia. They've got some tough games this year. They've got Tennessee, who looked fantastic, now up to the 7th seed. They've got Missouri, who we're talking about in a little bit, 6th seed, LSU, and Oklahoma still. So they have got some tough opponents. So, this is the one for me I need to to see them get the business done before this hard stretch of teams.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
We move on to the last game, which is Boston College versus Missouri. As I've just said, Missouri now up to the 6th seed. There was a lot of hype about them at the back end of last year. I think they lost 2 games last year. They lost to Georgia 30-21, and they lost to LSU in that high-scoring game that went back and forth. I think Cook had like 400 and something yards in that game. Now you say that Arizona have the best wide receiver in college football. A lot of people might argue that Luther Burden III, Mizzou, might be the best wide receiver in college as well. I think, what did he have? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games over 100 yards, and another further 3 that were in the 90s. You know, this guy is the real deal at wide receiver. A lot of hype. They did beat Ohio in the Cotton Bowl at the end of last year, but Ohio basically dropped their whole team because a load of them were going into the draft and wanted to prep. So, yeah, a lot of hype for them again this year. A lot of people think they can qualify for the playoffs. A lot of people think they can win a lot of games. How do you feel about this one? Boston College started really well. What's your feeling on these two?
I think that Missouri are real contenders again because of their defense. A bit like we talked with Nebraska earlier, but they've looked absolutely solid on defense. They haven't given up a single point so far. 2 shutouts. I know the first game was against Murray State, and then who did they play last week?
Buffalo.
Buffalo, which is 38-0 win they had on that one, so it's not too bad. But I mean, like if they can shut out 2 teams consecutively, and their offense is good as well. He's got Brady Cook at quarterback, and like you said, Luther Burden is a top receiver. Missouri is not really a team known for having top recruits at receivers. I think he's their first 5-star receiver in quite a while. I can't remember how long. But I think, was it a bit of a surprise that he chose to commit there as well? But yeah, he's doing a great job there. And their defense is solid. They've only allowed like 169 yards last week, I think it was, and they gained a total of 518 yards on offense. So they're a team that's cooking on both sides of the ball. And whilst Boston College are a team that are on the rise as well. I think it's going to be a tough match for them. And this game is at Missouri, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a really tough game for them. I do like Boston College's quarterback, though, Thomas Castellanos. I think he's an interesting player. Very good with his legs. Had some real explosive runs against Florida State when they played them, and he looks legit to me. So I think he it's going to be a tough game for him against a defense as strong as Missouri's. But I think Boston College, the way they're going, they'll play them hard, and it'll be a close. I think it's going to be close-ish game. I'm going to say.
Where's the spread on this one? It's another 16.5 spread in Missouri's favor. As I said, obviously we saw Jeff Hafley go to the Packers, leave a head coaching job to go and be a coordinator. I think we'll see quite a bit of that going forward. And then Bill O'Brien, who committed to being the offensive coordinator at Ohio and then left before this head coaching job. I don't think people expected them to be as good as what they are. Would you call it an upset that they got against FSU, or just FSU they're going to lose to everyone now, and we shouldn't hype that game up and say, look what they've done, they beat FSU, then maybe they can go in and challenge and beat the spread against Missouri.
No, I think it was an upset. I think because it's Florida State, they should have been better, and they're a team in a bit of a spiral at the moment. But they're a team coming off the back of a loss in Ireland. They wanted to come back. They should have come back strong. So, Boston College was a sort of a get-right game. They didn't. No. Boston College have seemed to have just come in with a certain level of confidence under Bill O'Brien that's quite intriguing, and I think I'd like to see them carry that forward. I think this game might knock it out of them a bit, but I think they're in with a good shout of because the ACC is wide open at the moment now. I don't know if they're good enough to be contenders alongside Miami and teams like that, but their team is definitely going to be up there. I say that they're probably going to collapse now after this game for the rest of the season. My forecasting for any teams has been rubbish so far.
Well, if Missouri are as dominant as what we think they can be with their defense and that combo quarterback wide receiver, for me, they've only got Alabama left to play. So we were talking before the season, all through the start of this season, how many they're from the SEC, so they get more. Their rankings always going to be higher than other people's because of the teams they play within their division. So we said, how many losses do you think you can have to qualify for the playoffs, or do you think you have to qualify for the SEC championship game and those two will get through? How many people do you think will get through from the SEC? I think 4 positions might go to them.
I think definitely at least 3. But both teams that appear in the championship game, win or lose, are going to be in the playoffs, I think. So that's likely. I think Georgia and Texas, or Georgia and Alabama. But yeah, I think there's too many. Is there too many good teams in the SEC at the moment?
There's too many teams playing well in the SEC. I think that's
half the division are in with a shout. The conference are in with a shout. With Mizzou and Tennessee could be pushing up there as well.
Ole Miss have been dominant.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting Ole Miss. The team that keeps really overlooking as well. Yeah,
it's the 14 team, the 12 team playoff is it's definitely opened it up for this, but isn't it? It's so hard to get away from the SEC teams, still, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a few teams that have completely dropped off though. They're like Florida, just whatever Florida are doing at the moment. Auburn got upset by Cal this week. Texas A&M have gone down a little bit.
They've not been great for a little while now, have they?
No, and so it's like, but there's a certain 4 or 5, 6 teams in the SEC that are just and we're with the focus on the SEC and the extra weighting that they seem to get from the selection committee. Then they're going to be right up there.
They've already got 6 teams in the top 10 currently ranked. So could be interesting. So, I don't think they'll get 6 spots for them. I think that you got to remember that the Big Ten as well: Ohio, Penn State, Oregon. USC. They've got to be given spots as well, because that is a very tough division as well. So it's going to be really interesting coming down to it. There might be some upsets. I know we only had the Florida State upset last year, them not being picked. I think that maybe we might have just moved the problem further down and going, hang on, Missouri only lost 1 game and they lost it to Alabama, who qualified. Why are they not in? But hey ho, it could be very, very interesting. Was there, as I said, it's very tough to be pick games for this week. Is there any games that you feel like I've missed and you've got your eye on this week?
I mean, there's not that many other big games. There's the 2 I mentioned. I think an interesting game that I'd like to keep my eye on is Notre Dame playing Purdue, because they really need to sort themselves out, and that's going to be a tough conference matchup. Outside of that, outside of that, there's not too many this week, I don't think. Is there any that you've spotted outside of these ones?
No, I think I might keep a little eye on Georgia, Kentucky. I think it's just an interesting one to keep an eye on and watch. Outside of that, I'm just having a little scroll to see if there is anything I want to be keeping. I might keep my eye on LSU, South Carolina as well. I think that might be an interesting matchup. I think South Carolina, not the team that
Hmm.
they have been in the past, but still got good pedigree in that team. So that might be an interesting one to keep an eye on as well, and see how Nussmeier plays in that. So that's probably it for me. Well, that's all we've got time for. Hopefully, before we go, I didn't say it. I've gone Arizona, Bama, Missouri. We went the same, didn't we?
Yeah, Alabama, Arizona, Mizzou. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're on the same page again.
I think so, yeah.
I'll ask Adam. I'll get his input. So next week when he comes on, he can tell us that he's beat us by 1 again or whatever it is. We'll find out. But that's all we've got time for. Thanks for joining me again. We'll be back next week. We'll keep you posted. But till then, keep it with the franchise tag, and see you again very soon.